We begin in October, 1347, Messina. Sicily. 12 Genoese trading ships drift into the harbor. They are ghost ships. The townspeople who gather at the docks are met not by sailors, but by a stench. A nightmare. Almost everyone aboard is dead or dying. Their bodies are covered in dark, weeping abscesses, black boils that give the sickness its name. The Sicilian authorities order the ships out of the harbor, but it is too late. The great mortality has arrived. We are told this story as a grim fairy tale of the Middle Ages, a story of biology. The culprit, we are taught, is a bacterium, Yersinia pestis. Its vector, the flea. Its vessel, the common black rat. Hiding in the grain holds of ships. A simple, linear, terrifying chain of infection. We are told that this single agent marched across the globe, unchecked, for 5 years. It claimed, by conservative estimates, 50 million lives. It wiped out 50%, perhaps more, of Europe's entire population. It brought mighty empires to their knees. It was the greatest catastrophe in recorded human history. This is the Orthodox narrative. It is clean, it is simple. It places the blame squarely on nature, a random, tragic mutation. It is also incomplete. The story we believe about the Black Death is a lie of omission, because the evidence, hidden in the chronicles of the dead and the data buried in the ice, tells a different story. The bacterium was real. The rats were real. But they were not the true cause of the collapse. They were merely the catalyst. The plague did not destroy the medieval world. The medieval world was a system, architected to fail. It was a structure built on a knife edge of instability climatically, economically, and socially. It was a system waiting for a single push. This is not the story of a disease. This is the story of a global system, and the glitch that forced its inevitable reset. The official story begins to break down when we examine the behavior of the plague, not the what, but the how. The narrative of Yersinia pestis, the rat, and the flea is flawed. This is glitch number 1, the speed. The plague traveled from Sicily to the north of England in roughly 18 months. It moved consistently at over 2 miles per day. Fleas do not travel that fast. Rats do not travel that fast, especially not over mountains or across arid plains. The plague also spread, inexplicably, during the winter. In northern Europe, outbreaks peaked when the temperature was freezing. Fleas are dormant in the cold. They do not feed. They do not multiply. This is a profound contradiction. The engine of the orthodox model, the flea, is neutralized by the cold, and yet the fire spread faster. This leads to glitch number 2, the transmission vector. We are shown images of the bubo, the swollen lymph node in the groin or armpit. This is bubonic plague. It is horrifying. It is also the least efficient way to transmit a disease. It requires a specific tropical rat flea to bite an infected rat, for the bacterium to multiply in the flea's gut, for the flea to then bite a human. It is a complex, fragile chain of infection. But the chroniclers of the time, the eyewitnesses, describe something else entirely. Guy de Chauliac, Pope Clement VI's personal physician, wrote from Avignon. He described 2 plagues. The first, the one with buboes, lasted 2 months, but the second, he wrote, was different. It came with fever and the spitting of blood. He wrote that all who caught it died, usually within 3 days. He said it was so contagious that it passed from person to person, merely by looking. This was not bubonic plague. This was pneumonic plague. The bacterium had entered the lungs. It was airborne. This changes everything. It no longer requires a rat or a flea. It requires only a cough. A single infected human in a crowded, cold marketplace could infect dozens. This explains the speed. It explains the winter spread. It turns the complex, biological chain into a simple, terrifying aerosol. But even this is not the full picture. Because the deepest glitch is not biological. It is systemic. Glitch number 3, the primed system. 1347 did not happen in a vacuum. The Great Mortality was not the start of the crisis. It was the end of one. For 40 years before the plague, Europe had been collapsing. It began in 1315, the Great Famine. The climate of the High Middle Ages, a period of warm, stable weather, had ended. A little ice age had begun. From 1315 to 1317, it rained, and rained, and rained. Crops failed globally. Chroniclers wrote of a desperate, starving population, of parents abandoning children, of cannibalism. By the time the plague arrived, the population was not strong. It was starving, weak, and immunologically compromised. The system was already brittle, and the system itself was a monoculture. Feudalism, a rigid pyramid structure. 90% of the population were serfs. They were assets, bound to the land. They owned nothing. They had no mobility. Their entire existence depended on a single point of failure, the annual harvest. Their economy was not diverse. It was singular. It was the most fragile system imaginable. The Black Death was not a foreign invader that toppled a healthy kingdom. It was a spark, landing in a field of dry tinder. The system was not killed. It was exposed. The glitch was not the bacterium. The glitch was the system itself. So, we have a crisis, a system already weak from famine, struck by an airborne pathogen of terrifying speed. But to understand the reset, we must analyze how the institutions of this world failed. This was not just a medical failure. It was a cascading, simultaneous collapse of every pillar of medieval society. First, the failure of knowledge. The most advanced medical minds in the world were powerless. The Faculty of Medicine at the University of Paris, the greatest authority on earth, was consulted. Their official report in 1348 blamed the plague on the stars, a triple conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars in the house of Aquarius. They believed the conjunction had released a miasma, a poisonous vapor, into the air. Their prescription: do not eat poultry, do not exercise, do not bathe, as this opens the pores to the miasma. And, most importantly, be not easily given to anger. It was useless. Physicians, draped in waxed robes, their faces hidden behind bird-like masks stuffed with herbs, were helpless. They were operating on a flawed paradigm. They were trying to balance the four humors, the ancient belief that the body was ruled by four internal liquids. They were trying to solve a biological crisis with superstition. When the people saw these doctors dying, just as fast as the commoners, the first pillar fell: authority, trust. It evaporated. Second, the failure of faith. This was the true earthquake. The medieval world was built on one unshakable foundation: God. The church was not just a religion. It was the government. It was the law. It was the spiritual and financial center of the universe. And when the plague struck, the church broke. At first, it was explained as God's divine punishment for mankind's sin. The prescription prayer, atonement. But the prayers did not work. The most pious. The monks living in sealed, devout communities died at the highest rates. In some monasteries, the mortality rate was 100%. The plague did not spare the righteous. It did not seek out the sinner. It was random. In Avignon, Pope Clement VI, the holiest man on earth, did not perform miracles. He did not face his flock. He locked himself in his chambers, sitting for months between two massive, blazing fires. To purify the air, he survived. But the image of the shepherd of Christ, hiding while his flock was annihilated, was devastating. Priests, who were meant to give last rites, abandoned their posts, fleeing in terror. The people died alone, unconfessed, unforgiven. Their souls, they believed, were damned. This was not a failure of prayer. It was a failure of the institution that claimed to have a monopoly on salvation. The second pillar. Faith had shattered. This vacuum of authorities created a monster. If the church was powerless, the people would invent their own salvation. The flagellants, groups of men, hundreds strong, marched from town to town. They stripped to the waist, and for 33.5 days, they rhythmically beat themselves with leather scourges tipped with metal. They were a desperate, populist extremist movement. They were trying to take the sin of the world onto their own backs. To beat the plague out of existence, they were a symptom of a system that had lost its mind. When the pillars of knowledge and faith are gone, or all that is left was Kai. The world of 1353 was a world of ghosts. Half the population was gone. Fields were empty. Villages abandoned. The survivors walked out of this trauma into a new reality. The rigid, unchangeable pyramid of feudalism had been inverted. This is not a metaphor. It was a hard economic calculation. This is reset number 1, the economic revolution. Before the plague, labor was cheap, land was expensive. A serf was bound to his lord's land. He had no power. He could not leave. After the plague, land was abundant, and labor was the most valuable commodity on earth. Imagine a surviving peasant. Let us call him Thomas for his entire life. He has been an asset, property. Now, he looks at his Lord's empty fields. The Lord needs him to plant the harvest, and the Lord next door also needs him, and the Lord in the next county is desperate for him. For the first time in 1,000 years, this man, Thomas, an illiterate serf, had leverage. He demands wages, not in loyalty, but in coin. He demands better tools. He demands freedom. The ruling class, the aristocracy, panics. This is not how the world is supposed to work. In England, in 1351, they pass the Statute of Laborers. It is an incredible document. It is, essentially, a law that makes it illegal to raise wages. It attempts to freeze pay at 13 to 46 levels. It tried to outlaw the very concept of supply and demand. It failed. It failed spectacularly. Wages for skilled and unskilled labor doubled. then tripled. Governments tried to enforce the old rules, and the people, for the first time, said no. In 1381 in England, this tension exploded into the peasants' revolt. They marched on London, tens of thousands strong. They were not just a mob, they were organized. They had demands. They burned the castles. They executed the Archbishop of Canterbury. They were eventually brutally suppressed. But the message was sent. The old system was dead. Feudalism was not reformed. It was shattered. The individual, the worker, had been born. This leads to reset number 2, the information revolution. This reset is more subtle. It is about ideas. The two institutions that controlled all information, the church and the scholastic universities institutions that based their knowledge on ancient texts. Not observation had been discredited, their blind faith and their flawed humors had failed. The survivors were skeptical. They were empirical. They had seen the highest authorities be wrong. They began to trust only what they could see. This new skepticism demanded a new way of thinking. It is therefore argued that the explosion of art, science, and humanism, the radical idea that the individual, not just God, was the center of the universe, found its fuel in the skepticism of the post-plague world. The survivors of the plague that were the children of the reset. They were the first modern humans. Think of Leonardo da Vinci. He was not given permission by the church to study the human body. He stole corpses. He dissected them. He trusted only his own eyes. This was an unthinkable, heretical act. Just a generation before. But in the post-plague world, the fear of God, Banahai, was replaced by a hunger for truth, and this hunger needed a new technology. The old way of copying books by hand in monasteries was too slow. The old monks were dead. A new, faster, more democratic way of spreading information was needed. In 1440, Johannes Gutenberg invents the printing press. It was not a random invention. It was a technology that became critically necessary in a world. A technology designed to rebuild a civilization whose knowledge bearers had been wiped out. The plague did not create the printing press, but it made it necessary. It was the trigger for the democratization of knowledge. The economic reset gave the common man power. The information reset gave him a voice. It is easy to look back at 1347 and feel secure. We are modern, we are technological, we are not superstitious peasants, living in filth, blaming the stars. We have germ theory, we have antibiotics, we have global communication, we are safe. This is the final illusion. We have simply replaced one fragile system with another. We have built the most complex, interconnected, brittle civilization in human history. Our feudalism is the global supply chain, a system so optimized, so just in time, that a single ship stuck in a single canal can cause economic panic. A system where a virus, out in one city, can shut down the entire planet in a week. We have replaced the University of Paris with our own high priests, the high priests of data, of finance, of artificial intelligence. We believe in their models. We believe in their predictions. We trust that their complex mathematics can manage a system that no single human understands. This is our miasma theory. The Black Death is a warning. It is a 700-year-old blueprint for systemic collapse. It proves that when a system becomes too rigid, too optimized, too complex, it does not bend, it breaks. The plague was just the catalyst. The real glitch was the fragility they mistook for strength, the arrogance they mistook for wisdom. The warning of 1347 is not about a bacterium, it is about us. It reminds us that the line between order and chaos is thinner than we think. It reminds us that all systems eventually face a reset. The only question is, will we see the next one coming?